got a different video today. We got the final video of the day. Before I go to work, I make sure I will upload those whenever I get off or whenever I have a chance to. Whenever I get home. But shout out to Court on Camera with this video. We got Druglords reacting to prison sentences. Without further ado, let's get into it.
Druglords reacting to prison sentences.
You're convicted because you're guilty. That's the plain and simple truth of it.
The war on drugs is one of America's biggest battles, and druglords like Dexter Lee Williams make it far, far harder. Williams joined the likes of El Chapo and Pablo Escobar in running a massive drug ring in Atlanta, Georgia, for 5 years. After valiant efforts from law enforcement officials, including wiretaps, recorded phone calls, and over a dozen arrests, the trail of cocaine, heroin, marijuana, and meth led to one man, Dexter Lee Williams, who already...
Marijuana isn't a drug if you say it. They use it in carrying, so technically it's not a drug. Everything else he said was a drug. But you lost me there. I don't think weed's a drug at all.
already had prior arrests for cocaine and marijuana distribution, but it seemed like he didn't want to be a small fry and wanted to be the boss, to his own downfall. In March 2020, Williams was arrested after officials intercepted a shipment of 87 pounds of cocaine worth nearly $4 million, which was a far cry from Williams' small-time gigs he did. But hey, everyone needs to grow, right? Without a single thing learned from major drug lords who always ended up in prison, Williams was put on trial and faced up to 60 years in jail. In court, the judge gave him a piece of his mind about the ramifications of drugs and how dangerous Williams is to the community.
You are involved in that problem that exists with many defendants that come before me.
Williams stood there and took it all, and despite his attorney trying to argue,
Are we talking about from me, Judge? You're holding what I said unless I claim?
I'm talking to Mr. Williams. I've heard everything.
Right, but you're holding, no, what other accusations? He didn't testify.
he was finally sentenced to 40 years behind bars.
I will sentence Mr. Williams to 20 years to serve. Count 2, I will sentence him to 20 years. That will be consecutive to count 1, and I'm going to require that be served.
The drug sentencing is no joke, which is probably why you shouldn't argue with a judge. Like,
people think you're harmless until they get to know you a little better and realize you have a temper, you're a little mean-spirited, and you don't appear to have a kind bone in your body.
Wallace Bigger, who had some choice words to say in court for being arrested on drug charges.
I did not get a fair trial, and I got a screwy lawyer.
Bigger didn't like his trial, despite being
I got a screwy lawyer. Hey, that's what, for real. You gotta make sure you save your money so you can get you a regular lawyer and hire a lawyer, because them niggas don't care at all.
there for running a drug network in Michigan, dealing thousands of pills like morphine and diluted. Despite running a twistedly lucrative drug business, the judge criticized Bigger for living a crummy lifestyle. Even the drug business itself was pretty substandard, as far as drug rings go, as they operated out of trailers, campers, and an apartment above a pizza joint. We better hope that dough didn't...
That's low-key smart. Apartment above a pizza joint to sell your weed, because no one will respect it. Like, you gonna raid you gonna raid somebody top of a pizza place. Like, nigga, you will be heard, because you will have to have everybody get out by the time he would already escape.
didn't have any additive secret ingredients. Anyway, Bigger completely denied all of the allegations in court, despite one of his drug dealers, Jason Blackmore, testifying against him.
Was the prime
One of his drug dealers, Jason Blackmore, testifying against him.
You had Jason Blackmore testify against you. Oh, yeah.
was the primary provider of morphine during that time period within Antrim County. He kept going back to Saginaw and was getting 800 pills a month, bringing them back here. And hopefully his sentencing at the high end of the guidelines and the consecutive nature will send a message to anybody that may want to fill that vacuum that regardless of your age, there is a consequence if you are caught trafficking this quantity of controlled substance.
Bigger was also quite mean for a 71-year-old man, criticizing.
I feel like one of my friends I went to high school with got locked up for, I think, trafficking 50,000 or 50, I don't know, of course, from California back home to DC. I don't know why he would do it. If I'm in California, I'm out the game.
Criticizing his lawyer, the judge, and the justice system, leading the judge to snap on him with some pretty heartfelt words.
It didn't stop you from being manipulative. It didn't stop you from abusing other people. I listened to the testimony of your wife who referred to the piece of paper, said she was high when she married you, which doesn't surprise me. I don't know what you
Was high when she married you is insane. So why would you say yes then? So if you said yes at the first time, because he has to, why didn't you say no at the time? Like, you have an option to say no.
You come to believe in your own mind the attraction is between the two of you.
You can't really expect a sweet old man from a drug dealer. Despite his complaints, Bigger still received 15 years in prison, making it the longest drug-related sentence in Antrim County's history.
The drone age has begun in the large-scale military online action game War Thunder. Experience.
I am sentencing you to 180 to 360 months on charge number 1. On charge 2, the controlled substance delivery charge, 23 to 240 months. Charges 3 and 4, 23 to 240 months. On the maintaining a drug house, 16 to 24 months. And on conducting the criminal enterprise, that's 50 to 240 months.
On the opposite end, some convicts instantly admit their faults, like Benjamin Bundy. No relation to the notorious serial killer Ted Bundy, but the name does seem to carry a crime-ridden curse. Bundy broke down in tears in court as he realized he had the blood of 2 victims on his hands, including his own girlfriend. Bundy dealt drugs in New Hampshire, but the competition forced him to get twistedly innovative, in the worst possible way, lacing his drugs with the extremely additive substance, fentanyl. As if those things weren't bad enough, his crazy concoction led to the overdose and death of Matthew Nichols and Bundy's girlfriend, Jennifer Azara.
I would submit that this case really is, in fact, a dismal testament to where all of this ultimately leads.
Bundy wasted no time in court, however, taking a plea deal and admitting everything. This wasn't the highlight of the hearing, though, as tensions and emotions got heated when the victims' families gave their statements.
The life that Matt gave to me is gone.
Time changes nothing. I miss her as much today as I did the day she died.
The whole time, Bundy kept a quiet and stoic demeanor, but even a hardened drug dealer couldn't handle broken parents, and he himself burst out into tears.
15 years, you get a second chance. I hope you use it wisely.
By the end, Bundy received 15 years in prison for his crime, and Azara's father thinks he might have a second chance after then. It seems lacing heroin with fentanyl is the latest culinary craze in this messed up world of drugs, as another dealer, Aaron Andrade, was also taken down for it. In this tragic story, though, Andrade was in court for the death of a previous drug addict, Kristen Coutu. Coutu was doing well in rehab, but eventually fell to the pull of heroin again when she started dating a drug addict, and this path eventually led her to Andrade. Kristen died of an overdose because it turned out Andrade didn't just sell her heroin, but the far more addictive fentanyl.
The state would have proven that what the defendant really sold Kristen Coutu.
Crazy. I had a friend that was in college but OD off of fake stuff, and it was fentanyl. Like I went to college, and fucking passed away. Shit's crazy.
Was nearly pure fentanyl, a controlled substance like heroin or morphine, hundreds of times more toxic than heroin.
So are all of these facts true?
Yes, ma'am.
Andrade was in court for second-degree murder, but he wasn't just facing life behind bars. He was also facing something far more tragic: the visible pain of Coutu's mom and family, as they couldn't get it together in court.
There were 2 Cranston police officers standing there. All I could say repeatedly was, "Please don't tell me my daughter is dead. Please don't tell me my daughter is dead."
Surprisingly though, unlike most convicts, Andrade showed remorse and guilt in court, which Kotu's mum even appreciated.
And I know I hurt a lot of people, including her family and my family, because we're all going through this.
It does make me feel a little bit better that he has that remorse and that he feels sorry for what he did.
Guilt doesn't make up for a daughter's death though, and Andrade got 40 years in prison after a no-contest plea. Now, while some drug dealers are only in it to make a quick buck, some are downright maniacal. Like Charles Crosty, aka Rome. The man behind this horrifyingly blank stare in court was arrested on 11 drug charges, but his rep sheet went way back. After a series of overdose-related deaths in New Richmond, leads in cases all led back to Crosty, who sold heroin, fentanyl, and cocaine. Crosty is like something out of a supervillain comic book story, however, as this real-life kingpin forced addicts to sell his drugs by beating them. During
Wow, that's the first I ever heard. You had your drugs sold by, what did he say?
This real-life kingpin forced addicts to sell
your drugs by beating the shit out of them. That's the first.
his drugs by beating them. During investigations, many of them pointed to their merciless boss, or his street name, Rome. And the one straw that broke the camel's back was an informant who bought drugs from Rome.
You gotta watch out for them informants, bro. They make a lot of money just telling on y'all folks. You gotta watch out for them. Them niggas are treacherous.
Individuals like Charles Crosty provide the weapon, they provide the bullet, and they spin the chamber, pointing at the addict's head, and all the addict has to do is pull the trigger. That's who Charles Crosty is.
The trial was pretty short and sweet, since Crosty couldn't have been caught more red-handed. But the way Crosty was completely silent, giving everyone a death stare, was very eerie. During the hearing, the chief of police described how he found the stare.
Look, the eyes tell it all. Like, for real. Like, I'm a believer of that. The eyes tell everything. Like, that dude has seen a lot of things.
Was very eerie. During the hearing, the chief of police described how he found Rome's dealers beaten and busted, almost in sympathy.
They would have black eyes, or their face would be swollen. And I would ask them, how did this occur? And they would frankly tell me that Rome, Charles Crosty, and his associates would beat them.
But by the end of this discomforting hearing, though, Crosty got 20 years and 9 months in prison.
Every day that he's locked up is one day that New Richmond, Clermont County is a little bit safer.
All in all.
Hey, shout out to Court on camera with these videos, and make sure I link everything about you in the description down below. Hey, without further ado, it's been